Ladies and gentlemen, Side Strafe back with another episode of the Strafing Run. And yep, as usual, been a while, but I thought I would go ahead and use up some of this footage that I managed to record of the Battlefield 5 beta. We'll talk about it a little. I've also got some footage following this of the older Call of Duty Black Ops 4 multiplayer beta, which is not the blackout mode that people are all hyped about. We'll talk about that, and I'll probably be streaming some of that during the weekend. I think starting on Friday, actually. But anyways, with that said, what's going on with the YouTube channel real quick? Yes, I am spending more of my time on Twitch, focusing on that. Flat out, I'm sure most of you know that YouTube is not a great place for content creators these days on top of copyright strikes. It's just really hard to survive on this platform. Quality is not something that YouTube or Google is really concerned with. But anyways, with that said, as far as the live streams go, I know many of you think that, well, you know, you're playing games that I'm not interested in, so why should I go to the Twitch channel? So the thing for me is, number one priority is chat, discussion, conversations. So no matter what I'm playing, it's always variety topics. So if I'm playing World of Warcraft on Twitch, you can come in there and talk about World of Tanks, World of Warships, Call of Duty, Battlefield, making sandwiches. It's just a place to hang out. That's pretty much it. Again, the priority is always going to be on the quality of the discussion. I need to be paying attention to the chat, talking with you guys. That's fun to me, and that's even why I enjoy streaming more than creating YouTube content, simply because I get to interact more with you. It's a fun and safe place to hang out and chill, just relax. Came home from a hard day of work or school or whatever, you got things going on in life. You have a nice, safe, friendly place to hang out and chill. And who knows, you might even make some friends, find some games that you might not otherwise think you're interested in. And that's that. So anyways, links for Twitch will be found down below as usual. Now, Battlefield 5. What is it with DICE or EA and their gimmicks? Why even bother with World War II? Why did they bother with World War I? Just to say that, hey, we're tackling World War I? Not many people are doing it. We're doing it. But you really weren't doing it. And you're still not doing it with World War II. Your gameplay is not reminiscent of something that we would find in World War II. And before I continue, I'm not looking for realism. I've never expected any amount of realism from a Battlefield game. But it would be nice to have some hints of historical accuracy. That's what we grew up with Battlefield 1942, Battlefield Vietnam, Battlefield 2, and then after that we had Battlefield 2142, which was science fiction, and a direction which I believe Battlefield needs to return to for the sake of being allowed to do whatever the hell they want. Now, with Battlefield 1, we had gameplay that was reminiscent of potentially a modern-day shooter. And I said when BF1 came out, I guarantee they're going to go World War II next game, and they're just going to port over most of the gameplay. Because right now, it's fairly similar. Because we had a World War I game, supposedly, but with fully automatic weapons all over the place, reflex sights, optics that were experimental or very rare or mostly never fielded. They were, for some reason, afraid to just provide everybody with a bolt-action rifle. Trench warfare was mostly non-existent. There were maps that had trenches, but the traditional World War I feel of combat was mostly absent. If you want that, obviously you go play something like Verdun. But it just felt pointless. It was a gimmick. It was just their way of saying, hey, we're doing World War I. Come over to us. But then it really wasn't World War I. I mean, they didn't even have the French as a playable nation when the game came out. It was kind of like, what? It didn't make much sense. And so I couldn't get into the game. The gameplay was okay, right? You know, the feel of the guns, the sounds, the graphics. That's always expected to be great from DICE. They know how to make that stuff. They are a capable developer, but I believe that their designers, their lead designers, the CEOs, somebody maybe at EA is pushing their buttons. They're just heading in the wrong directions. And they're doing the exact same thing with Battlefield 5. There's once again no point in it being a World War II shooter. Most of the weapons aren't nation-based. If you start out as a German soldier, recon, you're going to be using a Lee Enfield for sniping. If you're British and you pick the assault class, you start out with an STG-44. Okay, you could let that slide, whatever, not a big deal. But there were so many weapons on each side, and that's, I think, part of the fun, right? It's kind of enjoyable to pick that British nation and say, hey, I want to use the weapons that they used back then. That's just kind of part of the pride, maybe, if you're from Great Britain, right? Like saying, you know, this is our weapon, this is our rifle, we're proud of it, and taking it into combat and being successful with it. Same thing with Germany or the US or whatever nation you might find within these games. It's just part of the fun. We had it in Battlefield 1942. Now, sure, you kill a soldier, they drop the weapon, you pick it up, whatever. Again, could you overlook this thing? Fine, sure. But then we get to the attachments. Once again, reflector sights or reflex sights that may have existed, may have been experimental, but very rare. Generally never fielded. Why is DICE or EA afraid to stick people with iron sights? They think that maybe we won't like it, that we can't get into it anymore, that it's too challenging? Then stick with modern day combat or go into the future where you can do whatever you want. What's the point of saying, hey, we're World War I or World War II? What's next? Korea, Vietnam? Which war are you going to tamper with next? There's just no point. The graphics, the sounds, sure, it's great, but it just doesn't matter. Your gameplay is super generic and, again, very reminiscent of a modern-day shooter. If you go modern day, you can put whatever sights you want on a gun. You can mess with the optics. There's so many more things that you can choose from to customize and upgrade. If you go into the future, even more so. Battlefield 2143, so many of us have wanted a 2143, but I think ever since they got the license to Star Wars Battlefront, they've been afraid to compete with themselves. So I almost don't think we'll ever see a future Battlefield again. But it would make so much sense because they would be free to create vehicles and weapons and optics and gadgets and factions. Nobody would complain about men and women fighting side by side, and I'm not even really going to get into that whole issue. For me, it's not a really big deal, but, you know, again, it just seems like they're trying to pander. Most female gamers that I've known over the years don't give a flip about the representation of their gender in a game that is set during a specific time period where there may have not been that many service women. And if you really want to cover that, then there were some service women during the war on the Soviet Union side. There's a female tanker, some pilots, maybe some snipers. There's stories that you can tell without making things up. But again, men and women want great gameplay first. You don't have to pander. It's not going to sell your game anymore. On top of that, if you really want to support both genders, you want to make things up, you want to create weapons and optics and gadgets and unlocks and whatever, then go back to modern day. Go sci-fi. Give us 2143. I know you have Star Wars Battlefront. That's not exactly panning out for you either. Look back to what you created years ago. Your first game, Battlefield 1942. The follow-up, Vietnam, Battlefield 2, 2142. These games were golden. They were great for a reason. People remember them for a reason. They weren't perfect. They had netcode issues. The engine wasn't great. They weren't the prettiest games. But the gameplay was there. The maps were the right size. The objectives were spread out. Each objective felt like its own zone or map. Vehicles were balanced because of how large the maps were and how spread out the objectives were. People are complaining about tanks being overpowered nowadays and vehicles being overpowered in the more modern Battlefield games. You know why? Because your maps are console-sized. You have objectives that are right across the street from each other. Of course tanks are going to be overpowered. They don't have to drive anywhere. So now you're dumbing them down in other ways. You're forcing people to wait at the main menu to spawn on a tank, one of two tanks. This footage here, you know how hard it was to get this footage of me grabbing a tank? If you like tanking in Battlefield, good luck getting into one. It was the same problem in BF1. And then after a while, once all the unlocks start to hit, after about a week, good luck staying alive in a tank, because everybody's going to have a billion different gadgets to take you out. The balance of the old games came down to the number of classes there were. Engineers were good at taking out vehicles, but bad at taking out infantry. That was a great way to balance that class out. In later Battlefield titles, Battlefield 3 and 4, everybody was an engineer. There was no point to play anything else. They had good weapons to take out infantry and weapons to take out vehicles. Whether it was land, sea, or air, they could do it. They could do everything. So you were either a sniper or engineer in the later Battlefield games. But with that said, I would say that 3 and 4 are probably still stronger titles than what we had with BF1 and now Battlefield 5. At least, as crazy as things may have been, as many unlocks and insane progression systems as there were, it makes a little bit more sense because they were modern day or, you know, sort of near future. You could get away with way more in those titles. Now, though, it just seems like a pointless gimmick. It just seems like a way for them to say, hey, we're doing World War II again. Our boots are on the ground. We saw that you guys got mad at COD for being sci-fi, so we're not doing that. That seems like why they're doing it. DICE, you guys know how to make video games. You have some talented people at that studio. You have the technology. You have the money. You also have the recipe. You have the formula. You did it so many freaking years ago. Look to the games that made you great. And stop over-listening to the wrong people. Stop trying to compete with this game, Call of Duty. You're not COD. You shouldn't try to be COD. It was always a pointless battle to compete with this game. Nobody expects you to be this game. Broaden your horizons. With that, subject change. This is an older beta of the regular Call of Duty Black Ops 4 multiplayer. And it's COD. If you like COD, you'll probably like this. There's a couple of changes to gameplay here with self-healing and body armor. I think most COD purists are kind of against the body armor. I'd have to agree. The self-healing, I could take it or leave it. I'm not necessarily a fan of games that kind of give you some sort of second chance to survive. I actually appreciated the low time to kill that COD has always had. I found the TTK to be a little higher in this game, especially when they were able to use the body armor perk. But otherwise, this is one of those games that kind of scratches that twitchy shooter itch, that hit scan itch if you have it. They're still kind of going with this sort of sci-fi but familiar feel to the weapons thing. So if you're okay with that, you'll probably enjoy it. But really, while this footage plays, what I really want to talk about is the new Blackout mode that's coming out, which I don't have any footage of that. The PC beta is going to begin, I think, early access on Friday, this Friday. And then Saturday's the open beta for it. The Blackout mode is their Battle Royale mode. Now, most of you are probably thinking, ugh, more Battle Royale. I'm sick of Battle Royale. It's everywhere. So here's the thing. You know me. I'm not super into looter shooters. I'm not super into BR modes, usually. And it's always the same reason. I don't really think that there are any great ones. Now, before you yell at me about Fortnite, I respect Fortnite. I do think it's a good game, but I can't stand the building mechanics, which is a giant part of what makes that game. It's just not for me. That's it. That's all I have to say. It's a great game. I respect it, but it's not for me. I don't like the building. I don't want to deal with that. Now, PUBG, it's clunky. It's not optimized. They keep trying to make new maps before the game even runs smoothly. It doesn't feel good. It looks bland. The color palette is like brown and darker brown. It's just not for me again. I couldn't get into it. I didn't like the feel. the COD Blackout mode that I've been watching people stream on PlayStation 4 because Sony has some stupid exclusivity deal with Activision. Go figure. It looks fun for some reason. And we'll find out when I actually get to play it. I'm going to stream it on my Twitch channel. I'll hopefully try to get access to it on Friday. I don't know why. Maybe it's because a AAA developer is tackling BR. And by the way, I know that Battlefield 5 is supposed to have some sort of BR as well, but I don't know. Their game is coming out in November. This one's coming out October 12th. So it'll be interesting to see who has the better BR. But right now, it seems like a lot of people are having fun with Blackout mode. The map is surprisingly large. I've never seen Call of Duty pull off a large map. It looks pretty great. The PlayStation 4 version was maintaining a fairly consistent 60 FPS. I couldn't really tell how great the game looks. Some people seem to be complaining about the graphics on PS4, but on a live stream, I can't really tell. I'm sure it'll look fine on PC. This game looked good enough for me on PC with this gameplay. So I'm actually kind of curious about the Blackout mode. It just looks smooth and fluidic, and it has some mechanics that just seem to work well with the mode. Now, of course, they're going to need to tweak a few things. There does seem to be complaints about body armor being insane. There's like 3 levels of body armor that you can potentially get in Blackout. There's like this level 3 armor that's insane on top of this mega heal that gives you like 200 health, which makes you a freaking walking tank. So yeah, they're probably going to need to adjust a few things over time. But I don't know, something about it intrigues me. Watch some of it yourself on Twitch when I check it out this Friday, hopefully, and see what you think. On Saturday, it's going to be open beta. If you have a Battle.net account, it's going to be on the Blizzard client because it's Blizzard Activision, so they're selling it through that client. I just have this feeling that it's going to put PUBG down. I think Fortnite's going to be fine because it's very cartoony and it's got the build mechanic. It's going to be fine. But I think PUBG's actually going to feel some hurt from Call of Duty Blackout. We'll see. But I need a shooter again. I need something. Because lately, I just haven't had anything that's allowed me to utilize my nickname. So I'm actually kind of hoping that I enjoy Call of Duty Blackout. Go figure. I know me of all people, right? Out of all the years on this channel, you probably never would have thought that I'd be hoping that a Call of Duty game would be good. Anyways. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call it here. Very much appreciate you hanging out. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description below. And don't forget to join me on Twitch. Fantastic discussion, no matter what the game. We'll find something fun to talk about. And, yeah, I'll see you on the next one.